starting to learn to fly.
That's got to be a pretty cool experience. Hey everybody, Blind Man Travels here. Today we are going to do a reaction to the final part of the Rick Steves Travel Skills Special. For those of you who do not know, Rick Steves is a travel author and television host who focuses on teaching travel skills for Europe for mostly an American audience. So without further ado, let's dive right on in.
Hi, I'm Rick Steves, back with the last episode in our three-part travel skills special. We're in a village high in the Swiss Alps. In this finale, we'll show you how in so many ways you can actually experience more by spending less.
That looks pretty. Again, playing the music. We're just trying to get you to think about travel. Showing all the locations that this show is filmed at.
Our tips this time: finding the best value accommodations, getting around in big cities, and enjoying Europe's cuisine.
That's probably one of my favorite parts about traveling is enjoying the food in general.
Information can help you make the most of your vacation time, and if you're on a budget, it can cut the cost of your travels in half. Whether you discover Norway's breathtaking fjords, explore ancient temples in Athens, hike along a Roman wall in England, sweat with locals in Finland, or enjoy a concert in Ireland, you'll find the kinds of places and experiences you incorporate into your itinerary shape the character of your trip. In this three-part travel skills special, we start in the Netherlands, venture through Germany, dip into Italy, sweep through Switzerland and France, before finishing in England.
So we're in the final part here, home stretch.
This final episode, we start in the Swiss Alps, take a high-speed train to Paris, and finish in London. When touring Europe, many travelers only visit famous and well-promoted hotspots like Grindelwald here in Switzerland. It's the famous alpine resort in the shadow of the Jungfrau. Europe energetically markets its top tourist attractions. Alpine resorts like this are geared to large-scale tourism,
And geared to getting you to buy lots of stuff.
helping the masses have fun, spending their money. But just one valley over, you can have an entirely different experience. Riding this gondola, you soar, landing in the sleepy, unpromoted village of Gimmelwald.
That may or may not be the most wheelchair accessible, just because of how small and underpromoted it is. So it's something you kind of have to think of if you want to really up the beaten path. If you're confined to a wheelchair, there are certainly ways to go places where tourists don't go, but you want to do it in such a way that you might have to limit yourself to big cities and just go find more intimate neighborhoods.
In 30 years of researching guidebooks, I've found hidden gems like this in every country. Gimmelwald would have been developed to the hilt like neighboring towns, but the village had its real estate declared an avalanche zone, so no one could get new building permits. The result? A real mountain community, families, farms, and traditional ways.
Don't you feel like you're watching the movie Heidi?
Choosing places like Gimmelwald and then meeting the people, you become part of the party rather than just part of the economy. This is a realistic goal for any good traveler.
We're splitting logs like Abraham Lincoln, except we're doing it in Switzerland.
Take a moment to appreciate the alpine cheese.
So older is better? Oh yes.
I don't know.
Oh yes, I always
For me,
take
it's
yogurt.
a younger one.
Depends on what you like. More mature cheese usually has more pungent smell or taste.
Once you're off the tourist track, make a point to connect with the living culture. Pitch in, even if that means getting dirty. Here, Farmer Peter's making hay while the sun shines.
That's a lot of hay to be pulling down there.
Whether in a big city or a small village, your major expense each day is renting a bed. And you have lots of options. We'll review them from cheapest to most expensive.
I agree. That is the biggest expense of any travel experience after possibly the airfare is getting accommodations.
In rural settings, like here in Gimmelwald, I like simple, less expensive accommodations. Gimmelwald has a pension, a bed and breakfast, and a hostel. Europe has thousands of hostels, like Gimmelwald's Mountain Hostel, offering cheap dorm beds. While not for everybody, the price is certainly right. Rather than privacy in your own bathroom, you'll enjoy a convivial camaraderie, a helpful reception desk, a welcoming common room with lots of information and hiking partners.
So that would be a good place to go if you're traveling solo and maybe are not uh, uh, limited to a wheelchair, for example, and looking for a place to connect with other people.
And the kitchen, where hostelers cook for the price of groceries. It's dinner time, and after a sunny day of hiking, travelers are sharing stories. Today, European hostels come in all shapes and sizes. Modern ones are often big and institutional. They come with inviting lobbies and modern facilities.
Although they probably more likely have Wi-Fi now, they can always use a VPN.
Rather than the traditional large dorms, more and more hostels are offering smaller rooms, family rooms, and even doubles for couples.
That's very true. They do offer a limited amount of doubles depending upon where you're staying. So it's always worth looking into.
In cities or villages, the young at heart of any age are entirely welcome. A great thing about hosteling, especially if you're going solo, is gaining an instant circle of friends. For me, B&Bs offer an ideal combination of comfort and economy, privacy and cultural experience. Every country has private rooms for rent. You just got to know the local word. Husrum is Norwegian, for chambre which is French, for Zimmer, which is what they say here in Switzerland, for bed and breakfast.
That isn't like a bed and breakfast in America where it's all fancy and you get jams. It's usually something where they're renting out a couple of rooms in the house for travelers, but it's a little bit more of an intimate experience usually.
B&Bs give you more than just a good night's sleep. Imagine enjoying a renovated attic with a view of this small-town Czech castle. Being a guest in a home rebuilt after a civil war in Dubrovnik. Savoring the salty ambience in the captain's house on a Danish isle. Or being a noble for a night with Giorgio in the heart of Tuscany.
Yeah, those are all different, unique ways of experiencing breakfasts.
Okay.
What is quite often
Tonight, we're sleeping in the home of Ollie and his wife Maria. They teach in the village and supplement their income by renting out 3 rooms in their home. As is generally the case with B&Bs, the rooms are as comfortable as a hotel, but homier. While you're living in someone else's home, you can be as private as you like. Just take the key and do your own thing. Or you can go downstairs and get to know the family.
this yellow cliff over there.
Yeah.
That's where the eagle has each year its nest.
Typically, hosts enjoy sharing. Ollie knows the backside of the Jungfrau intimately.
And the young birds in early spring, you see them starting to learn to fly.
That's got to be a pretty cool experience.
pensions are a good value. A pension is a place without many of the services you'd expect in a hotel. This one's inexpensive, with the toilet and shower down the hall. The bedrooms are well worn and traditional, and the place creaks just the way you want it to.
Vintage.
And once again, humbler places seem to foster community.
That's the French train. It looks like, I think it's a TGV in France. Also inspired by the Shinkansen bullet train from Japan.
Continuing our swing through the best of Europe, we're heading for Paris. After a full day in the Alps, this fast train will get us there in time to cap our day with a view of the Eiffel Tower. A big city like Paris is bursting with world-class sights, towering monuments, magnificent boulevards, and glorious history. In a major city like this, you have lots of hotel options. The neighborhood you choose, as well as the hotel, shapes your experience. Many travelers opt for the big, international class hotels outside the historic center. I find that these, while very comfortable, build a wall between you and the people and culture you traveled so far to experience.
I try to avoid those if I can. Obviously, they're probably also the most well equipped for accessibility if you're confined to a wheelchair, so just keep that in mind.
I prefer a small-scale hotel in a cozy neighborhood. For example, the area around Rue Claire is a pedestrian-friendly bit of Village Paris, a 10-minute walk from the Eiffel Tower.
I've been there. That is a really nice place to be. The hotels, the buildings are older, but it's really nice to have that as a home base for the city of Paris.
Accommodations are a classic example of how spending less can actually give you a richer experience. Europe's big cities still have well-located, characteristic hotels at an affordable price. There's a range of categories. Many countries have helpful rating systems. In France, plaques with stars are posted by the door.
That's helpful, but you also, you don't want to, you can always look at websites like TripAdvisor. Don't take everything you see on TripAdvisor as the truth, because there are people that will complain who have never had any other experiences with, for example, with travel, or they might be people who are just being sent there to complain to shift the numbers.
In a well-chosen one-star place,
On the flip side of that, there is also people that rave about it, and they might be raving too much for it to be genuine. Whenever I do take out the 1 stars and the 5 stars, and I try and look at the averages.
budget travelers can sleep well and safely. Rooms are pretty basic, but come at near youth hostel prices. European cities have lots of night noise, and especially in cheap hotels, this can be a problem. Rather than paying a premium for a room with a view, I take a quiet room in the back.
It's actually a pretty good idea too, although I'm a pretty heavy sleeper, so it doesn't really bother me too much.
In France, two-star hotels offer for me a great balance of price and comfort. Still basic, but with good beds, private bathrooms, and often tiny but
I've stayed in that hotel. That elevator is just small enough for 1 or 2 people, or one person with their luggage.
appreciated elevators. The more people who share a room, the less expensive it gets per person. A double costs just a little more than a single, and many hotels are happy to squeeze in a cheap third bed.
True, double. If you're talking about by European standards, a double is a room for two with either 2 twin beds or a queen bed, basically.
While three-star hotels are more expensive, they can also be a good value. Here, you're paying for extras like a lounge, room service, and all the comforts.
You also have to consider your budget when you're looking at accommodations. I would prefer to stay in a less expensive accommodation if it frees up more budget for me to actually enjoy some memorable experiences like a extra nice meal or an extra nice tour or something along those lines.
It's one of our typical room with big TV, mini bar, iPod base, of course air conditioning. It can be very useful, especially in August in Paris. Bathroom.
2 sinks.
Yes, 2 sinks. French people like it. And you can be 2 at the same moment in the bathroom.
Very nice. Know your priorities. This hotel's great, but those on a budget may need to choose between these extras for an additional $50 a night and a nice dinner, concert, or city tour.
Basically said what I was saying.
Throughout Europe, small family-run hotels offer fine values. This London hotel is plush, beautifully located, and more affordable than you might expect because it has no elevator.
And it's also an older building, so it may not be the most accessible. Obviously, the United Kingdom does try with accessibility, but some of the older hotels again may not be wheelchair accessible, especially. Now, if you can walk around and you don't have any issues like that, then that's probably a good option.
This historic former monastery in Florence costs no more than a top-end chain hotel, but is bursting with Renaissance character.
It's really comfy.
Here in Norway, you can enjoy feeling right at home on a fjord. And a favorite of mine in Rome, small enough where the owner can go over your sightseeing plans, provides fine rooms and a breezy conviviality
I think I've stayed in that hotel too when I was in Rome.
you simply can't find in bigger hotels. Some travelers love the freedom of just finding hotels as they go. But to get the best rooms in the popular places, book in advance.
I'd agree with that. You probably do want to book ahead more now than what you used to. It's more common to be. It's less common to be able to get to a place and get a room on the fly. Maybe 20 years ago, that was more likely that you could do that. But it's always a good idea to reserve accommodations ahead of time just to be on the safe side.
Smart travelers use a savvy mix of guidebooks and the internet. Web-based review sites are popular and powerful, but while helpful, they can also be misleading, so be careful.
That's what I was saying about TripAdvisor. Be careful with that.
And by the way, making reservations through web-based booking services may be convenient, but they cost your hotel 15 to 20%. I get the best price by booking directly through my hotel.
That's always a good idea too. Booking directly with the hotel, and especially if you have special needs before you book, it's always a good idea to reach out to them because they usually have an email there that you can email out to. They're usually pretty prompt with their responses.
Health concerns while traveling through Western Europe are about the same as traveling back home. While I take extra precautions when traveling beyond Europe, in Europe, I drink the water and eat everything in sight. If you do get sick, get help right away. Over here, a good first stop for medical advice is the neighborhood pharmacy.
I remember being sick in Germany, so I had to go to the pharmacy to get some medication for it. So that's always a good piece of advice.
Also, hotels can refer you to a nearby clinic or call a doctor who makes house calls for far less money than you might expect. Then, prescription in hand, you can head for the 24-hour pharmacy.
You can tell the pharmacies usually because they have crosses on them.
Europe generally has whatever medicine you need. In case you need a refill, bring your prescription from home with the generic name typed or printed legibly. My health tips are all about wellness. Being on vacation can be exhausting. Get plenty of sleep, eat healthy, drink lots of water, and pace yourself. Know your limits.
You're going to be walking around, so hydrate, hydrate, hydrate. if you're walking around, especially if you're in the heat of the summer.
Oh, look at this. One of the great joys of travel is eating.
Boy, that looks really good.
Each country in Europe has its own distinct cuisine. Leave the tourist zones. Find places filled with locals enjoying seasonal and regional specialties. The variety of food is endless, and if you know how to choose a good place, you don't need to spend a fortune. A few basic rules for eating your way through Europe. Go for the local specialties. You'll get better quality and price.
Yeah. Sometimes it's better if you go to a restaurant that doesn't necessarily have a printed menu like we think of menu, because they're going based upon what's available in the market for that day.
Eat seasonally. Don't miss truffles on your pasta in the fall or
Truffles are delicious, by the way. I don't normally like mushrooms, but truffles on pasta is delicious.
fresh berries in Norway in summer. The location can make the meal. Bosnia may not be famous for its food, but dining under the bridge in Mostar makes a lifelong memory. Most of all, eat fearlessly.
That's escargot. That's snails.
Try things you've never had in places you've never been. There are eateries to fit every budget. And while I recommend an occasional gourmet splurge, especially in countries famous for their high-end cuisine like France and Italy, you'll save money and improve your experience with Europe's countless budget options. Some of the most affordable and enjoyable food in Europe can be found not while seated at a table.
That looks like a gyro or the Turkish word, a kebab.
Table, but while standing in the street or the market. Every country has its own beloved street food. It's fast, cheap, and delicious.
In France, you can get the crepes, which are usually good street food.
In Greece, try the corner souvlaki stand. And in Istanbul on the Golden Horn, grab a fish sandwich fresh from the guys who caught it at one of the venerable and very tipsy fish boats.
Can you imagine trying to cook on one of those?
For a step up and a seat, there are lots of casual bars and bistros, hometown hangouts where you can enjoy local cuisine in comfort without going broke. One of the best examples of this is in Spain. Every town tempts you with tapas bars, where you belly up to the bar and just point at things you'd like to try.
That's also a good option for dining too.
In Denmark, I love the open-faced sandwiches, which manage to be both simple and elegant at the same time. You can munch the best pizza ever for the price of a fast food hamburger in Naples, where pizza...
Go to Naples and order the margarita. You won't get a margarita like we think of. You'll get one of the original variations of pizza.
Pizza was invented. The rustic simplicity of sausages and fondue feels just perfect high in the Swiss Alps. And these days, pubs are more than just friends gathering for a beer. They can come with tasty meals too. By the way, interiors in Europe, from restaurants to hotels to pubs, are now essentially smoke-free.
That's actually good information.
Especially in France, consider the cuisine sightseeing for your palate. And when you know your budget options, eating at the corner cafe or bistro costs only a little more than lunch at a fast food joint. Most countries have a plate of the day. That's a plat du jour here. A handwritten menu in the local language only with a small selection indicates a good value.
And the good news is if you have on your phone, you can use Google Translate to try and read that. May or may not be the best with handwriting, but it's worth a try.
And the house salad makes a quick and healthy meal. In France, bread is free. S'il vous plaît? Just hold up your basket to ask. In France, a free carafe of tap water is either on the table or will be quickly if you ask. When it
You drink that for hydration, and you drink the wine to enjoy and accompany the food.
Comes to drinking, I go local. In Bavaria, it's a liter of lager. Tuscany, a robust red wine.
I'm working.
Provence, a nice rosé. Ireland, a hearty Guinness. Spain, a rich Rioja. In Denmark, a fiery akavit.
Yes. Yeah.
And in
It looks strong for that tiny little glass.
Greece, it's ouzo with a sunset. Adapt to the culture you're visiting. Over here, dining's not rushed. Slow service is often good service. In a nice restaurant, the table's yours for the entire evening. To get the bill, you need to ask for it. As service is often included and waiters are generous.
Yeah, so one thing that we as Americans especially need to be aware of is that don't expect them to try and turn the table to get you out fast. So if you want to just sit there and linger over your food, and especially if you're with a group of other people, that's an enjoyable way to pass a few hours of an evening at a Parisian cafe, for example. Definitely do not hesitate to just sit there and enjoy your food, eat it slowly, and enjoy your company.
Generally paid a living wage, tipping is less expected and often unnecessary. This varies from country to country. Get advice from locals. Picnics are fast and fun and give you a purpose in Europe's colorful markets and shops. When picnicking, you can buy whatever looks good regardless of price. Choose
Those pastries do look good.
an atmospheric place to make your picnic memorable. We've put together a cheap and healthy meal for two. Delightful cheese, tiny quiche, strawberries, grapes, wine, a little something for dessert, and a reasonable view.
Looks like a nice little picnic there.
That is cool.
Traditionally on the continent, breakfast is small. In France, locals just grab a croissant and coffee on the way to work. But these days, most hotels are offering hearty breakfast buffets, complete with cheese, meat, yogurt, and fruit. We're speeding at near
That's the Eurostar. It's a train that goes from Paris to London or from Brussels to London underneath the English Channel Tunnel, which is also called the Channel.
200 miles per hour to London, the final stop on our Best of Europe loop. Europe is continuing to unite both politically and physically. From the start, the wealthier countries of the European Union have helped their less affluent neighbors catch up. And after a generation of huge investments, its transportation infrastructure keeps European commerce and trade moving faster than ever. And that includes travelers like us. The Eurostar
Just like I was saying about Japan, Europe is not perfect and they have their issues that they're dealing with as well.
train, which speeds under the English Channel in 20 minutes, is just one example. From Italy to Norway, great bridges, tunnels, and bullet trains are making this small continent even smaller. The fastest way now from the Eiffel Tower to Big Ben is not by plane, but by train. London's giant wheel is an example of how the nations of the EU can work together. How do you make a spectacular Ferris wheel? Swiss motor, Italian steel, German design.
That's actually a pretty cool Ferris wheel ride. I think those can hold up to about 50 people, if I'm not mistaken. I've heard of wedding parties on them where the prospective bride and groom exchange their vows.
And a capital English view. As Europe continues to unite, nations are less threatened by regions. Within Spain, Madrid now lets Barcelona wave its Catalonian flag and speak its own language. The Irish gift of gab comes in Gaelic. And London doesn't care. And for the first time in centuries, Britain has allowed Scotland to have its own parliament.
In fact, Scotland had a referendum a few years ago to vote to stay or leave from the United Kingdom. They did vote to stay, but that was something that was considered. And one thing to be wary of in England is, of course, Brexit is still a hot topic button.
For those of us who love Europe's cultural variety, this is good news. Unification does not threaten Europe's diversity. In fact, that diversity is both as vivid as ever and more accessible. Imagine, today for lunch, it was quiche and fine French wine under the Eiffel Tower, and for dinner, pub grub and a hearty ale in a classic London pub.
I like pub grub. Fingers and mashed potatoes is basically mashed potatoes with sausages and gravy on it.
Here's to diversity. Throughout Europe, cities are becoming increasingly better organized. Visitors can easily master excellent transportation options: buses, subways, and taxis. Even budget travelers need to remember that vacation time is valuable. Spend money to save time.
I'd agree with that. If you want to save time, it doesn't hurt to spend money, just so long as you are, frugal with what you're spending.
Groups of 3 or 4 can travel cheaper and faster by taxi rather than riding buses and subways. These days, throughout Western Europe, most cabbies are regulated, honest, and charge the metered rate. The extra fees are clearly explained and legitimate. I round the bill up 5 or 10%.
Ciao, grazie.
London, like most big European cities, has a fine underground system, letting you zip anywhere in town regardless of rush hour traffic, fast. Big cities become surprisingly manageable when you get comfortable with their subway. To avoid ticket window lines, buy tickets from machines.
This has changed for London. I think you can tap in your credit card now and tap out your credit card, your US issue credit card, whenever you go through the turnstiles for the London subway system.
Follow the signs to the right platform. You'll find helpful maps everywhere. In what
Not all of those lines, by the way, are as wheelchair accessible as we would like, just for your information. So if you have questions about that, obviously there are other resources you can look at specifically for that, but not all of those lines are specifically wheelchair accessible.
Londoners call the Tube, everything is labeled north, south, east, or west. Each line has 2 directions and therefore 2 platforms. Signs list the line, direction, and stops served by each platform. Lost? Locals are happy to help. Because some tracks are served by several lines, signboards announce which train.
That's very similar to what was happening in Tokyo too. There's a lot of the same organizational stuff. They all work on the same type of system for mass transit wherever you go. But it doesn't hurt to pay attention.
Next and how many minutes till it arrives. Final destinations are displayed above the windshield. And always,
Mind the gap.
mind the gap.
That's the part where they would probably put down a ramp for a wheelchair.
City bus systems are also worth figuring out. Buses are generally frequent, user-friendly, and come with a view. Here in London, as in most cities, a 24-hour pass pays for itself in about 3 rides. It lets you just hop on and off both buses and the Tube as you like. Even if you never use public transportation back home, try it over here. After a few rides,
I've used lots of public transit in the United States, so it's kind of old hat to me by now.
you'll be getting around like a local. Once you've mastered getting around, your next challenge is to better understand your sightseeing. You can do that with a guide.
Or in my case, sight not seeing.
Either by taking a tour or hiring one privately. All over Europe, independent local guides, while pricey, give meaning to the cultural and historic riches that surround you.
imagine 2,000 years ago, a person who has never seen the photograph of a leopard. And then they see the first leopard ever pounce out of the floor live.
As a result, all of
To enjoy the help of a local expert without the expense of a private tour, you can take a guided walk.
In other words, we're talking about
Especially here in Britain, you'll find hardworking local historians taking visitors on fascinating walks through a particular slice of their town's past.
So here we
Some tours hit the biggies. Others are more offbeat.
Down below there, of course, is Cleopatra's Needle. Why is it called Cleopatra's Needle? Because she's the only Egyptian we know. That's the reason why.
That guy looks like a fun host.
Walking tours like these are
Or excuse me, tour guide.
advertised at the Tourist Information Office and on the internet. For me, they're almost always time and money well spent. While most major cities have your standard big bus orientation tours, all over Europe there's a more flexible option. Hop-on, hop-off buses make a circular route, stopping at the top dozen or so attractions, with 3 or 4 departures an hour and a continuous narration of the site.
I do like the hop-on, hop-off buses. They are actually pretty good for getting oriented in a city.
A single ticket gives you 24 hours of hop-on, hop-off privileges as you sightsee your way efficiently through town. And for the ultimate in economy and control, you can use your mobile device and download self-guided audio tours.
You can also use Google Maps for finding a lot of information too, or figuring out how to get to where you're wanting to go for your sightseeing.
After every trip to Europe, I'm reminded we can never exhaust this continent of what it has to offer. The fine points of European culture survive and inspire. Its art-packed museums make it clear the passions of the past are still with us. And most of all, it's the people who keep me coming back. Whether truffle hunting with friends in Tuscany,
famous truffle.
going for a torchlit sled ride high in the Swiss Alps, or joining new friends on the beach for a shrimp fest in Denmark.
That all looks like good.
Europe is both a playground and a classroom. This concludes our 3-part travel skills special. Remember, anyone who equips himself with good information and expects themselves to travel smart can. Thanks for joining us. I'm Rick Steves. Until next time, keep on traveling. Cheerio.
So that is the final part of the Rick Steves Travel Skills Special, Part 3. So put your comments down below. I am putting together a playlist of all my reactions up there. Please hit the subscribe to watch more from Blind Man Travels. If you want to see something else I've done recently, you can click right there or right there. Again, I'm not sure exactly where it's going to be because I am blind.